This man really didn't expect it. Just went out for a drink with a female colleague. Ended up being chased and attacked by a crazy stalker sister. When he opened his eyes again, he had turned into a famous cannon fodder goblin in a different world. Luckily, he inherited the violent abilities from his past life. He leveled up just by eating at the beginning, not even afraid of the orc that was summoned. The male protagonist's final memory of his past life was a glamorous woman seated on top of him, her fiery red lips flickering past. His life was taken away by flashing blades and fresh blood. Once consciousness returned, he suddenly realized there was a terrifying old monster in front of him. Surprisingly, it could speak human language. It casually even gave him a name. After he regained more consciousness, he finally had the ability to observe his surroundings and then realized he was lying among a group of monster babies. And he was also a green little ball. The male lead finally confirmed that he was reincarnated into another world as a goblin. This time, it was really inhumane in the literal sense. But being inhuman also had its advantages. In just 3 days, he grew into a young boy. Not only could he speak, but his physical strength had also greatly recovered. Seeing his smooth punches and kicks, all the other goblins were amazed. He grew another day. The days of only eating exploded silkworm pupae in the cave finally came to an end. From now on, he needed to go out hunting on his own. Finally, he basked in the long-lost sunlight. Regardless of which world, the sun selflessly shone on all things. But things were not quite the same. How come there were birds with 4 wings? The appearance of the plants on the ground was also extremely eerie. The male lead confirms again. He truly reincarnated into another world. Next is their first hunt. If they team up, the results will be twice as good with half the effort. So he begins to recruit the strongest physically, Daji. Daji doesn't appear very smart. Conveniently, it's easy for the male lead to command. Soon, they set their sights on a solitary horned rabbit in the grass. The cunning city dweller crushes the rabbit in one move. Before the male lead could bask in his glory, he almost gets backstabbed by Daji. This is prey they're supposed to share. How can he hog it all for himself? The male lead feels that Daji lacks education. Tough love is still love, so he both scolds and cares for him. Until the point where Daji no longer dares to steal and eat. Only then does the male lead start to deal with the rabbit. At the moment of holding the horn of the horned rabbit in his hand, system text suddenly appeared in his mind, obtaining a small unicorn rabbit horn. But before he could react, Daji was already starving. Helplessly, the male lead had to let him eat first. Daji, who tasted rabbit meat, was overwhelmingly grateful. Tears uncontrollably streamed from the corners of his eyes and mouth. The next day, they repeated the same trick. Then the male lead proceeded to acquire a larger horn. A perfect virtuous cycle, so to speak. But as the rabbit meat entered his mouth, the male lead realized he had received more than just a prop. He even acquired unicorn rabbit skills. His abilities from his previous life had not been stripped away. The world he lived in his past life was not peaceful either. In order to survive, he continuously fought in the crowd with his supernatural powers. He relied on his ability to devour anything to dominate opponents. Anything could be considered food by him, and there is a certain probability of obtaining item abilities. Although the other abilities gained in the previous life have been cleared, but as long as the key initial ability remains, there is no need to fear the difficulty of making a comeback. Daji admires the invincible male lead more and more, but the male lead feels it is still not enough. After all, this world still holds countless unknown risks. The male lead and others eat rabbits every day. Finally, they were exposed in front of their companions. He also gained his first fangirl, Xiao Mei. Their hunting team unconsciously stood out in the entire group. Being able to easily hunt the one-horned rabbits is truly powerful. Not to mention that the male lead, even being a goblin, is handsome. You're really amazing. Hoo animation. Sweet animation. What about me? Average. Xiao Mei really wants to join them and fawn over them. The male lead is somewhat helpless, but there is strength in numbers. Letting her join is not entirely impossible. Sweetie talks about anime, but unfortunately, they couldn't go hunting the next day. The rain kept all the goblins trapped in the cave. Sweetie talks about anime. The male lead also goes along with it. Sweetie talks about anime. It just so happened that they could go to the treasure trove to get some materials. Sweetie talks about anime. Challenging to make higher grade hunting tools. Sweetie invites Gentleman, a character. However, the materials were found. Sweetie talks about anime, but it also showed him the dark side of the goblins. Several human females were kept in the depths of the treasure trove. Sweetie talks about anime. He clearly understands what it means. Sweetie talks about anime, but he was powerless in his position. While he was making weapons, Sweetie talks about anime. The goblin elder, who was originally named by him, came closer to talk. Sweetie asks about anime. He is the most experienced elder in the tribe. He also noticed the recent activities of the male lead. Sweetie applies for anime. He marvels at how quickly he is leveling up. Sweetie speaks as a member. The male lead heard about leveling up for the first time. Sweetie found out by asking about anime close black lens bracket. Turns out, all it takes is tapping your head twice, and the level automatically appears. Sweetie talks about anime. Active level. Unknowingly, he has already reached level 86. Slowly leveling up. The 100th level is not far off. Gob Grandpa says once you reach level 100, you can evolve. Sweetie talks about anime. However, his aptitude is definitely outstanding. The male lead seems lost in thought. Sweetie requests to browse anime. But he is a unique individual. Sweetie requests anime. If you want to see higher level goblins, Tien talks about anime. In fact, Zhuang's strength is still out hunting. Tien likes anime. He'll be back in a few days. Tien wants anime. And they will also bring back new good things. Goblin chuckled obscenely. Tien talks about anime. The male lead remains silent. Since Xiaomei joined the hunting team, Tien talks about anime. The variety of prey they can hunt is increasing. Tien watches anime. Sweet calculation. Tien watches anime. Tien reads manga. Whether it's a venomous snake or a mole, it's no problem. Xiaomei is in charge of support. The male lead is responsible for being the tactical support. And Daji is in charge of the vanguard. The arrangement of the three-person team is clear and flawless. Daji and Xiaomei have no problem eating anything. Cooking under the guidance of experts. It's more like feeling extremely grateful just to get some meat to eat. But the male lead hunts with a different purpose. The variety and quantity of food are more abundant. He also gains more skills. The poisonous snake this time is even stronger than he is now. His strength has improved significantly once again. As for the snakehead, only he can enjoy it. After all, others would be fatally poisoned if they ate it. But for the male lead with a gluttony attribute, poison, of course, is no problem. The hunting over the next few days went smoothly. The male lead naturally drifted away. He walked into an unfamiliar cave. As a result, he was defeated by hidden bats. Their simple weapons are no match for the flying enemies. It's still very difficult to deal with a large number of flying enemies. In the end, the male lead had no choice but to have Daji raise the shield. Try to fight back on their own. Luckily, eating the venomous snake gave them the snake's evil eye. Can temporarily petrify bats. Take advantage of the present. Finally managed to deal with them. Looks like there's not much meat, but surprisingly tasty. Also successfully obtained the bat's skills. However, things are going well on their end. But they forgot that their other companions were still hungry. That night, the goblins who were still hungry that night turned hostile. Want to dominate and eat the male leader. But he had long sensed their murderous intent. The moment someone had murderous intent towards him, the male leader woke up. He jumped up and surrounded everyone. One of them died instantly due to his imperfect toxin control. Thus met their end on the spot. This frightened the other goblins, causing them to break out in a cold sweat. But since they had murderous intent towards others, naturally, one should be prepared to be killed. Before the male lead could take action personally, the little fangirl, Xiaomei, rushed forward and attacked. Who do you think you are to mess with my idol? Even the male lead couldn't stop her. In the following days, they even switched to better weapons. With long-range weapons, they could hunt down passing orcs. Gabi. Relying on slingshots, they quickly incapacitated them. Every move was executed with perfect coordination, ultimately, reaping the rewards under the lead of the male. The scene was so scary that Xiaomei couldn't bear to look directly. Indeed, pork is still the most delicious. Also, the portion is generous and satisfying. Recalling last night's attack, the male lead decided not to eat alone to avoid resentment. Instead, he brought it back to share together. Otherwise, there might be trouble later on. The other goblins were still a bit fearful, but they couldn't resist their hunger. Finally, everyone knelt at his feet and began to devour ravenously, sweetly discussing anime. The male lead had never experienced it in his past life. Sweetly discussing anime. Maybe there is an interesting group of followers. This kind of thought appeared in his mind for the first time. Sweet anime. In the shining of the bloody moonlight. Sweetly discussing anime. The male lead wasn't attacked today. Sweetly requesting anime. But there was still something disturbing his dream. Sweetly discussing anime. That is the system he wants to upgrade. The male lead randomly clicked around in a daze. Sweetly discussing anime. Completely unaware that he made a major decision. Sweetly discussing anime. About to evolve into a medium demon draw. Sweetly discussing anime. So on the 14th day of the male lead's rebirth, sweetly discussing anime, successfully grew hair, regained the charming handsome face from the previous life. Indeed, a handsome guy is a handsome guy. Even as a goblin, his appearance is not diminished at all. He turned his head and looked. The group Daji indeed also benefited from his presence. Turned into a silly little handsome guy. The awakened infatuated Xiaomei was even more excited. She knew the male lead is a rising star. A woman's intuition is just as powerful. Other goblins also gathered upon hearing the sound. The goblin grandpa was greatly shocked. What about the cream of the crop? How can there be a genius that evolves within 2 weeks of birth? And there are even 2 of them. Post-evolution, Daji and the male lead. The difference in body size became more apparent. But Daji knows best how powerful the male lead is. So she wanted to have a match with the male lead to test her strength. Although Daji's power is stronger, in actual combat, the male lead still has the upper hand. Their friendly battle is not over yet. However, the male lead suddenly sensed another presence. He quickly called out the onlooker Xiaomei. There will definitely be a tough battle next. It turns out that a pack of wolves is attacking from the grassland. The horned rabbit being chased ahead is powerless to resist. La Pa, second senior brother passing by, is also innocent, having done nothing and yet fiercely bitten. The three-person team is observing the situation from behind the tree. It's a good opportunity to test the new evolved power in the crossbow. Upon hearing this, Xiao Mei bent her bow and nocked an arrow. She shot directly at the Wolf King. The wolf pack immediately sensed and rushed towards them. The male lead and the other person also met them head-on. The arrow just now was poisoned. The pack of wolves, having lost their leader, was already in chaos. Xiao Mei occasionally shoots a cold arrow from the back. The two who just evolved quickly finished them off. The poisoned Wolf King originally wanted to struggle. The male lead had already set up his posture, but unfortunately couldn't fight against the snake poison. Died without dignity like a silly dog. The male lead directly gnashed his teeth at the Wolf King. As expected, obtained skills of the group type. The three definitely couldn't finish eating the pack of wolves. So as usual, the male lead took the rest back. However, this time he didn't allow others to eat and drink for free. After eating, they had to give back to him. The others hesitated at this point. If they could find food, they wouldn't have to eat for free. Now they can only ask the male lead for hunting skills. The male lead sighed helplessly. It indeed developed into this. So, he not only started teaching hunting but also weapon making. Since he has his companions to take care of, he also feels being a leader is quite nice. Determined to lead the goblin tribe to its peak from now on. Little Goblin Beauty? On the 17th day since the male lead's reincarnation, an event that caught the goblins off guard occurred. Human females actually collectively committed suicide by drinking poison. Perhaps they would rather die than continue to face despair. At this point, they have no other choice. Had no choice but to bury them with flames. Surprisingly, all the human females. After this little episode, it's back to daily life. Little Zhang at the end of the line is trying hard to keep up. During this time, the male lead has been busy training his so-called siblings. However, he did not forget to continue devouring. His own strength is still constantly increasing. At this time, another group of goblins came from afar. The male lead was about to draw his sword. However, they were stopped and told that they were from the exploration team. He is like your father. The male lead completely forgot about this. His eyes widened in shock. Every time the exploration team returns, they not only bring back food supplies. Sure enough, they also captured a new group of beautiful girls. Tonight, they can stay up all night again. As for why they are always interested in human females, probably because goblin genes are strong. No matter which race they mate with, goblins will always be born. Of course, they would naturally choose the more attractive ones. Although the male protagonist could understand the beast's instinct to reproduce, but as human beings, they couldn't bear to just stand by. So they decided to take responsibility for temporarily keeping them safe. The exploration team immediately became anxious upon hearing this. The group immediately split into two sides and tensions rose. At this time, the female goblins came up to mediate. There are clearly such good-looking girls. Do you really need to go outside to catch them? Anyway, they can't be bothered to be implicated in this. Why not let the leaders of two generations come out and compete? The one who wins will have the right to speak. However, weapons cannot be used. Both sides have no objections to this. And the result was simply without suspense. What is this line? Is the educational guidance over? The new generation surpasses the old. The current male lead. He holds the skills of countless races in his hands, even without using weapons. Simply spitting out spider silk is no big deal at all. Even the female goblin and Xiaoxing couldn't help but sigh. They had just left not long ago, and have already nurtured some really talented folks. So, starting from today, the male lead. He officially became the leader of the whole group. Human women don't have to worry about being attacked. They will temporarily stay here without worrying about food and clothing. The male protagonist will find time to send them back. The girls are not foolish. There can't be any goodwill in a thieves' den. The male protagonist also looked back calmly. It's true that he has his own thoughts, but the girls won't lose out either. It's enough to teach him about human knowledge in this world. During the conversation, the girls said they all come from a merchant group. They were ambushed and captured by older goblin males during their journey. All the other males were killed. Only they, the 5 girls, survived. Talking about the past, terrible memories resurfaced once again. They all cried together. The male protagonist gave them time to digest their emotions on their own. He quietly turned around and left. Come back the next day. They regained their positive attitude. After all, in dire circumstances, crying won't bring anything. The male lead tried to make breakfast for them. After all, food is the necessity for all creatures. Good food indeed can improve one's mood physiologically. It is a healing remedy for the heart. Humans do not evolve like goblins, but they have various professions. For example, the quiet girl is an appraiser and blacksmith. The girl with eyes is an alchemist, while the younger sisters are a cook and a tailor. The red-haired girl leading them is a rookie warrior. However, to the male lead, she is the most useless one. He plans to have her join the training later. Now he is busy settling the girls every day, arranging training for 2 generations at the same time. The elder goblins have just returned. There are also many unreasonable and disobedient ones. The male lead is also slowly training. Strive to meet all his requirements. The rainy day of the next day, the male lead is in the cave, engaged in battle training with Daji. They put on armor and shields. Let all the goblins come to watch. That night, an expected incident occurred. After all, the male lead's prestige is not completely convincing. Surely there are goblins that will lose to the lower half. Want to go attack the girls? Is it really okay? There are clearly 5 top quality goods here. Isn't it strange to do nothing at all? TN talks about anime. The male lead was well prepared for this and didn't sleep at all. Save them again from the fire and water. See them still in impotent rage. The male lead couldn't be bothered to continue the conversation. Kick them away with his foot. Sweet talks about animation. Squat down to comfort the girl's emotions. Second time being saved. The red-haired girl buries herself in his arms, crying in grievance. Sweet talks about animation. Other goblins are also attracted by the commotion. The male lead conveniently gathers everyone together. Sweet talks about animation. Decides to set an example by killing a chicken to scare the monkeys. In the reign of the late night, the male lead shows everyone the consequences of defiance. Sweet talks about animation. Those who act without authorization are hung upside down by spider silk. Sweet talks about animation. Even the rain cannot wash away the blood on them. Sweet talks about animation. Now, does anyone still dare to disobey the rules he has set? Sweetie, please talk about anime. The goblins watching finally lost their nerve. Those several negative examples. Please talk more about anime. It wasn't until the next morning that they were exposed and lost their momentum. For the sake of the tribe's food. Sweetie talks about anime. The daily hunting must continue. Sweetie talks about anime. The triangular horse encountered that day. Arrows are completely ineffective against their hard armor. Since the original plan is no longer feasible, Sweetie acts in the anime. We can only use softness to overcome hardness. The male lead uses spider silk personally. Then they attack from both sides with Desi. Engage in a close combat fight with an axe. But it is well known. Sweetie talks about anime. The harder the enemy is to kill, the higher the reward. Sweetie talks about anime. Sweetie, indeed. The skills obtained from it are super awesome. Henceforth, the male lead's basic attack with a sword can automatically turn into a 3-hit combo. Sweetie buys anime. When sleeping at night, the male lead is woken up by the red-haired girl shaking him. Sweetie talks about anime. She quietly lies down next to the male lead. Sweetie talks about anime. She feels safest by his side. So they shared a bed for the whole night. But what they didn't expect was, when they woke up, Xiaomei didn't want to be left out. How did it end up with them holding onto a human pillow on both sides, which left his arms sore the whole day? Meanwhile, Xiaoji, who used to be ignored, blossomed into a beauty. Another necessity for human women diminished. Now the group can finally establish its structure. Xiao Jing is the logistics minister. Xiao Li is the captain of the lightly armed forces. Xiao Mei is the captain of the long-range forces. Daji is the captain of the heavily armed forces. As for the only mage in the village, Xiaoxing, now only one person can establish a magic unit. Now everyone can train in their respective roles. The male lead finally managed to sneak out to eat alone. The first tier magic of the end system's final shot. Is the first time using attack magic this fierce? Awesome. So the wandering male lead continued to walk towards the north side of the forest. Along the way, bloodstains were seen everywhere. The goblin grandpa reminded earlier, do not provoke the master, the red bear, from the north. Watching the triangular horse being bitten to pieces alive on the ground, the male lead also developed some retreat in his heart. But when the red bear really appeared in front, that is, the male lead felt it looked very delicious at first glance. The mouth can't resist the hunger and thirst, even if it's difficult to hit, so what? He at this moment, full of anticipation to devour new skills. Take down this guy. Xiao Mei seems to have sensed something. Standing at the entrance of the Twilight Cave, hoping for the safe return of the male lead. The other goblins are busy with their own matters, completely unaware of the male lead's whereabouts. No one knows what he's deciding, determined to fight the strong enemy at all costs. Starting by testing with the attack magic used just now, the red bear seems to have sensed the danger in this attack, would rather sacrifice an arm than risk being hit in the chest. Its remaining left arm attacks even more ferociously, capable of tearing through a big tree or the claw strike of a trihorse. The male lead doesn't dare to face it head-on, can only dodge awkwardly, taking advantage of the red bear's attack to counter. He leapt high and swung an axe down. To his surprise, its head was even harder than anticipated. He had to change his strategy. To deal with hardness, one must use softness to overcome strength. The male lead used his old trick again and used spider silk to bind it, binding the red bear tightly with no room to breathe. But it was not only physically strong, it could even breathe fire. The spider silk couldn't stop it at all. Sweetness talks about anime. Sweetness talks about anime. Sweetness talks about anime. The male lead was partially burned unexpectedly. Sweet talk is moving, quickly hid behind a tree to temporarily regroup. Sweetness talks about anime. He didn't expect the red bear to have this skill, but he still had no intention of retreating. At worst, they would both end up injured. Anyway, he was determined to eat grilled bear paws today, so he deliberately appeared from the front. Sweet anime. After successfully defending himself, he provoked the crimson bear to breathe fire on him, despite the huge risk of burns. But in order to stab it in its soft mouth with a sword, the male lead was also giving his all. But before he could celebrate halfway through, he was struck painfully by the crimson bear's left arm. He was thrown back dozens of feet. His body slammed heavily against a rock. If he didn't have a skill to reduce the impact, his bones would have been shattered for sure. In that brief confrontation just now, that broken sword is still stuck in the mouth of the Crimson Bear, at least sealing off the ability to breathe fire. However, the male lead's condition is even worse. Truly a case of both parties being worse off. The Crimson Bear is still roaring in a threatening manner. At this moment, the desire to devour surpassed everything in the world. The main character jumped up forcefully. He delivered a heavy blow to the Red Bear from behind. They fought on relentlessly. Even with his arm being flung out, he did not stop. They battled fiercely until the early morning of the next day. At this moment, the Red Bear's claws had already pierced deep into the main character's chest. Meanwhile, the main character's sword plunged into the Red Bear's head. As long as he could eat, it would still be the main character's victory. He fought on with his last ounce of strength, biting fiercely. He collapsed, exhausted, amidst the announcement of a new skill by the system. What the main character didn't know was, his level had once again surpassed the limit, and once again completed the rigorous special conditions, enabling him to evolve into a rare species, Great Demon. When the main character opened his eyes again, he only felt a deep hunger in his body. My mind is only filled with satisfying my stomach. He casually held the bear's head in the palm of his hand. Anyways, he decided to take a bite first before speaking. The system started to continuously report on various matters. Countless skills of the bear were being acquired one after another. At this moment, the male protagonist was still unaware. The world in his eyes unexpectedly became so small. He was just about to peel off the bear's skin, only to realize that his original long knife had turned into a tiny toy the size of his fingertip. So, the big ghost was really big in a physical sense. So when he returned to the tribe again, he scared the other goblins, who thought he was an enemy coming to slaughter them, and they were about to form ranks to counterattack. Can appearance change so dramatically? The male protagonist smiled helplessly. At this time, Xiao Mei, who had worried about the male protagonist all night, ran out, recognized him at a glance. Before he had a chance to show his affectionate feelings, "I'm back." Xiao Mei kicked him right away. "I was worried sick about you not coming home all night." But with the male lead's defense now, it only shook her to the ground. Unable to beat her, but she's really worried. However, he did run off without saying a word to fight desperately. His left hand also flew off. So the male lead expresses remorse and admits his mistake. The goblins around have not yet recovered from the shock. You should know the male lead was just born a month ago. He actually managed to defeat the master of the North Forest alone, evolving into a big ghost. Truly unmatched by anyone before or after. The male lead once again becomes the biggest star of the entire group, surrounded by people chattering all day long, knowing everyone loves to watch. The male lead finally did what a goblin should do. Since the first blood, they have switched on their energy, engaged in a crazy indulgence with the harem girls. The initial development was still quite normal. Everyone just gathered together, quite shocked at his evolution speed. But as soon as he stood up to leave, Xiao Mei and the girl with red hair immediately lined up and followed. Those who didn't know thought we were playing eagle-catching chicks. In fact, the male lead was just trying to maintain propriety. So they went to find some clothes for the girls to wear. But the newly changed fierce appearance. At the beginning, they still startled them. When they looked later, it really was the male lead. They also relaxed. But watching the male lead flirt with girls, Xiao Mei quietly ate jealousy behind him. However, he didn't realize it. Instead, I continued to step up my efforts. First, I got a new weapon from the blacksmith girl, so he couldn't help but touch her head. The soft look of a girl is just adorable. The redhead girl also joined the jealousy team when she saw it. Then he continued to flirt with the twin chefs. He promised to provide them with extra help, seeing how quickly they adapted to the environment. The male lead was also very pleased. There's a saying that to capture a man's heart, you have to first capture his stomach. The male lead also had a good impression of the two chefs, jokingly asking them if they wanted to join the harem. As a result, they didn't object at all. Looking at the male lead, their faces blushed with shyness. However, things started to become more unreasonable here. Finally, he had to go take care of the alchemist lady. She was originally the most alert among them. At first, she even wanted to concoct poison for self-defense. But now she's gradually let her guard down against the male lead. When she heard that, she admitted being slightly afraid of his current imposing appearance. The male lead casually picked her up. "I can't help it either." Really, how annoying. Being able to melt the icy beauty is quite a different experience. The two behind-the-scenes spirits of the two girls could finally not bear to watch anymore. Why is the male lead ignoring them? Since that's the case, they climbed up by themselves, clinging to the male lead like a koala and refusing to let go. A woman's heart is truly like a seabed needle. On the second day of frolicking with the harem, something that caused even more trouble for the male lead emerged. After all, only he evolved into a powerful demon. There are no longer any rivals in the entire group. Basically, they're on the verge of death after just one hit. The male lead had no choice but to use restorative magic everywhere. Even Daji, who used to be evenly matched, couldn't make it. This deeply impacted his good friend. Dejectedly left the cave. Unintentionally, Xiao Mei and Xiao Li. Their relationship became better and better. Xiao Zhang continued to dig for the magical stones she loved. The red-haired girl also started to join the training. And the male lead started using a slime in place of his lost left hand. Every day, she tried to adapt by doing needlework. Meanwhile, Xiao Xing took his book. She refused to return it until she finished reading. Uncle Goblin was gossiping and watching from outside. They were living happily every day. But Gan Ansheng didn't last long. Xiao Zhang, who was digging stones, hurried over. What should we do? Please, hurry and save her. She was holding a blood-covered carbuncle. This time she actually dug up a stone man. She seems to be barely clinging on. The male lead hastily treats her. Turns out the stone men in this world can bleed too. Wait until she wakes up. She starts to recount her experiences. It turns out that the gem on her head is of super high quality, valued at up to billions, and thus fell into the hands of human adventurers. In fact, the situation is more than that. She is still the familiar of a legendary wizard, specifically created, used to guard the treasure left behind by the master. Inside are legendary items collected throughout his life. This attack caused damage to the core of the small familiar spirit. The end of her life is near. At this point, she can only seek help from the male lead. Her master loathed humans most in his lifetime, so at least they hoped not to let the attackers succeed. As long as the male protagonist could accomplish it, everything would belong to him, since everyone had said so. Of course, they didn't want to let the attackers succeed. They were about to engage in their first battle with humans. The male protagonist was also on high alert, specifically took an elfstone dagger from the female blacksmith. The stronger the weapons, the more at ease they felt. Seeing the worried expressions of the human girls, the male protagonist promised to only fight back if the humans didn't relent. Otherwise, they would try their best to just drive them away. They wouldn't easily resort to killing. When they arrived at the magnificent palace, just saw that the newcomers had already made a big hole in the wall. Originally, the male protagonist tried to negotiate peacefully, so one person went ahead first. But soon the adventurer team gathered together. The tone was certainly very unfriendly. It seems he was being treated like a guardian beast. Sweetie acted even before the male lead could speak. The assassin among them launched a sneak attack. Sweetie triggered animation. Was the assassin's hidden aura useless? The male lead was still giving a final warning. Sweet part of the animation. As long as they obediently leave immediately, they can still save their lives. But these rookies confidently attacked. Clearly their power doesn't match even a fingernail of the male lead. Originally, he was just messing around and not expecting to fight back. But the back row mage insisted on seeking death, thinking they had high-level items, believing they could easily defeat the male lead. Unfortunately, this move really angered the male lead. Finally reached the limit of patience. Since they were going to kill, they should also be prepared to be killed. Hucking cartoon. He won't be polite anymore. Sweetie talks about cartoons. With a wave of her hand, she called all her companions out. She effortlessly took them all out. Taste the animations. Sweetie invites dynamics. Regret not listening obediently. Buy cartoons. Help. By the way, they were stripped and shared. First-class person. The male lead, however, felt no guilt. After all, they were all scum. After devouring humans, he gained various job transition skills. Regenerate and gnaw on their drops. The male lead now has a system backpack and invisibility skill level 6. Next, there is the entire treasure trove as loot. Sitting in the middle was the deceased legendary magician. At least the treasure did not end up in the hands of the most hated humans. Familiars could also leave at ease. Lastly, the precious gem on their head. Nature is also left to the male lead. He swallows it in seconds. Obtained the golden rule. In the corner he didn't see. Da Ji and Xiao Zhang gradually developed feelings. Thank you, Xiao Ji. Then they start packing the treasures together, just in time to use the system suitcase just acquired. The male lead can't bear to see the magician forever alone, so he intervened and cremated him. Unexpectedly, he got a legendary mechanical left hand. A legendary DA mechanical left hand. Really getting what's missing. The effect of this left hand is more and more amazing. The operation is excessively flexible. This really delights the male lead. As soon as they return to the cave, he immediately proposes. We made big profit this time. We must have a banquet to celebrate. The human luggage happens to have a lot of good wine. Following the male lead, one can indeed enjoy good food and drink spicy stuff. In the coming days, the male lead was busy dealing with the acquired treasures. After identifying everything, he began distributing them. All the middle ghosts received magic items. Meanwhile, the male lead shows a crimson long spear and a magic bracelet. These two are also legendary grade items. Their appearance matched his current style. Don't ask, it's invincible. Next up, it was the long-awaited hunting time. Whenever he acts, it's bound to make waves. He directly commanded everyone to make bear meat hot pot. It's good to have kitchen helpers in the palace. Looking at it now, it's still the red-haired girl who's the most useless. Afterwards, everyone organized a ranking competition. After all, there also needs to be a small leader among the middle ghosts. The community is thriving. The male lead cannot neglect his personal growth. He will find time to go out and eat more. For example, the magnificent golden spider. The skills obtained after eating it seem to be able to be sold directly as golden threads. There are also ruby deer. If I eat a few more, I wonder if I can create gems on the spot. Sweet talks about anime. The male lead originally just wanted to get stronger. Unexpectedly, he suddenly encounters a romantic encounter. Sweet, please. The original tree looks pure and sacred. Sweet talks about animation B. But I didn't expect the tree spirit inside to be so casual. In other worlds, it is mermaids who seduce males. But in this world, it's tree spirits. Even though succubi seduce you just to absorb energy. Sweet animation. But even as ghosts under the peony, they are romantic. When Uncle Goblin was explaining earlier, Sweetie consults anime. It's a pity not to have seen it with my own eyes. Sweetness invites anime. Right now, the male lead has encountered this good thing. Sweetie talks about anime. He is still a virgin in this lifetime. After Sweetie talks about anime, can't resist this overly sweet trouble at all. So he immediately unleashed his boundless energy. He wants to avoid being drained dry by the enchantress. Then he can only turn the tables on the enchantress and drain her. Boundless energy. The male lead successfully graduates. Even received the blessing of the tree spirit. In fact, she still feels unsatisfied. Looking forward to the male lead coming again next time. The male lead appears reserved on the surface. But deep down, he is also thrilled. Not even afraid of encountering more monsters on the road. He is even more invincible today than usual. He thinks he has concealed it well upon returning to the cave. He also helped Lil Star prepare a few magic soldiers. Finally, she was no longer on her own. But he felt her mood wasn't good. At first, the male lead hoped it was just an illusion. Turns out, it wasn't just her. Additional skill. Whether it's the blacksmith M. Additional skill. Even Xiao Mei, who usually stuck to him. Everyone looked at him with disdain. The male lead had no choice but to seek help from Daji Xiaozhong on the side. But both of them had sweaty faces. We can't really say. Don't you know what you did? Little Star and Little Lee refused to answer as well. The red-haired girl ran away crying at the sight of him. The usually gentle kitchen sisters. He also began poisoning the food. The male lead was truly puzzled. In the end, he had to ask the ultimate savior, the alchemist. Indeed, the Ice Queen remains the calmest. Adjusting his glasses, she directly gave him the answer. You were caught fighting outside and had your authority challenged. The girls in the palace being happy is a bit strange. The male lead only realized this then. He had been carrying the mark on his neck for the past 2 days. It could be described as being ostracized from all directions. Now he finally understood the reason. However, he couldn't think of what to do next. They say that a melted ice queen is the most passionate. The male lead didn't expect to experience this phrase firsthand today. The cuteness and arrogance outside are not worth mentioning. Only the straightforward mature woman can win the first kiss in the harem group. The male lead began to have wandering thoughts again. But the angry Xiao Mei finally couldn't hold back. She never wanted to be arrogant and proud again. She still had to be straightforward with the male lead. Perhaps I didn't arrive at the right time. No, you arrived at just the right time. The harem group following them also came after hearing the news. Did we also arrive at just the right time? The following plot is hard to elaborate on. It can only be understood and not expressed in words. Daji and Xiaozhong are listening at the corner outside. It can only be said that the male protagonist is worthy of praise. If it were an ordinary person, they definitely can't bear it. Let the wives wear their avatars. What kind of experience is this? It can also act as a visual communicator for sharing. It couldn't be more convenient. Just woke up after a night of passion. The male protagonist immediately sensed a hostile aura. Soon, others also noticed the unusual situation. Only after going out did they realize that a group of arrogant fairies had come to visit. Clearly, their intention is to seek help. Want to ask the goblins for help. Chasing away humans who came to steal the fairies' treasure. The male lead had actually done this before. But the tone of these fairies was really off-putting. The food offered for months wasn't really appealing. It was a dish with poor quality and character. Originally, he could have helped out easily. But the male lead immediately refused, not showing the proper attitude when seeking help. He decided to ignore it. The fairy leader was about to draw his sword. The male lead used a move to intimidate everyone. He firmly controlled the fairies and no one dared to move. Seeing this, he immediately grabbed the leader by the neck, lifting him up and giving a warning. Despite seeking help for negotiation, they dared to set up an ambush. Is this the sincerity of the fairies? Before the words even fell, an arrow shot over. The male lead bit and broke it in one go. The team leader was unable to. Had no choice but to let the guards quickly stop and show themselves. The male protagonist took out a red magic gun to intimidate. This time the leader finally got scared, led everyone to retreat in a dejected manner, although he didn't shout out. But in fact, his face clearly showed that he would definitely come back. The next day, the male protagonist encountered many gray cuties. Burned off the sticky liquid on the outside with fire, pulling out the core and crushing it without hesitation. From then on, he also learned the cute king's splitting technique. Can create a clone that shares vision using blood. This is the generation of self-splitting. So the male protagonist quickly came up with a use, mixing his own blood into the clothes, and having his wives wear them close to their bodies, so they could always be together. It is also convenient to locate protection in emergency situations. It is easier to be vigilant with a doppelganger. The fairies indeed came back the next day. Without truly repenting, they seek the male lead's protection, yet they still dare to come provoke. I am truly tired of their behavior. It seems they haven't learned enough from the last lesson. The male lead roared a second time in a commanding manner. These fairies really don't learn from their mistakes and got in trouble again. Since they insist on coming voluntarily, the male lead accepted all as it is, used spiderwebs to bind. He tied up all the fairies and took them as captives. The leader is still stubbornly denying it. Other fairies felt wronged upon seeing the male lead. They didn't want to come either. It's all because of this stupid leader wanting to save face. Upon hearing that, the male lead decided to give others a chance. Let them have a simulated battle with the other goblins. Those who win have a chance to survive. But he actually secretly smuggled goods, adjusting the order of the male-female battle table, deliberately making the males strong and the females weak. As a result, many male fairies were defeated. Even the leader became easy prey for the male lead. And the other female fairies are not doing well either. Everyone needs to surrender their weapons and become prisoners. The male lead is always merciless towards those who want to kill him. At this moment, the old goblin comes over while pounding a steak. I am also getting more energetic as I get older, although I dare not casually attack them. But he always keeps an eye on the male lead in the harem. It would indeed drive me crazy. But if I'm not allowed to have some fun once in a while, the accumulated anger of this old man is about to explode. Sweetie talking about anime. At this time, Daji is still working hard every day to improve his strength. Sweetie talking about anime. Evolved into a fierce subspecies of a great demon. His previous sense of inferiority has finally eased. Sweetie talking about anime. Ever since the male lead evolved on his own. Sweetie talking about anime. He almost thought he wouldn't qualify to be the male lead's best friend again. Sweetie talking about anime. Fortunately, through hard work, he finally caught up with Sung. Once again, he entered the same stage as the male lead. Sweetie, please follow the storyline. And his physique has surpassed the male lead by many circles. His reddish bronze skin is as hard as iron. Sweetie talking about anime. It is precisely because he possesses both. The blessings of the fire and chaos demigod. Sweet anime. Every time Daji evolves, the first thing that must be done, sweet anime, is to find the male lead for another battle. The male lead who hasn't encountered an opponent for a long time. Sweet anime. Naturally responded readily. Sweet anime. The brothers engaged in another passionate fight. Sweet anime. This time, the male lead didn't use any flashy skills anymore. Sweet anime. But even in close combat. Sweet anime. The male lead still had the upper hand in combat. Sweet anime. Finally, someone could fight him evenly. The male lead once again acknowledged that Daji is his formidable opponent. Sweet anime. As a result, that night he had a dream. Sweet anime. An unknown figure apologized to him. Sweet anime. And also bestowed upon him the ability of mysterious kinfolk. Sweetie talking about anime. Waking up in a scent of soft jade. Sweetie, please talk about anime. The male lead is still a bit confused. Sweetie talking about anime. But more importantly than this, is the gradual evolution trend rising in the group. More and more goblins are evolving into mid-level demons. Sweetie, please talk about anime. The girl with glasses tested their abilities. Among them, there is one with magical potential. Sweetie said. There's also a handsome guy Xiaoji who is suitable to be a nanny. Sweetie talking about animated warmth. The male lead blushed at being called brother, one after another. Sweetie talking about anime. Little Star also evolved into a long-haired beauty, although she's now only a half-demonic spirit of the ghostly race. Generally speaking, evolving with half of a race will also have a discount on strength, but there is a strange pattern on her arm. It resembles the pattern on the male lead's body. I wonder if she is influenced by him. Even with half a bit of magic power, she is extremely powerful. With a casual wave, she can summon numerous mountain fires. Nearly blew up a large forest. She still had energy left afterwards. It left the male lead dumbfounded. I really wonder how terrifying her strength will be after she evolves by removing half of her power. Her power will reach terrifying heights. To celebrate her super powerful special evolution, the male lead deliberately gave her new magician equipment. Kemi's best friend Xiao Li looked on with envy. She also needs to work harder. The male lead contemplated silently. Due to his intervention in this village, the current growth speed is already vastly different from normal goblins. From this, he had a hypothesis. Perhaps the living environment in the month after birth will cause a significant change in the growth rate of goblins. So now all the young people are growing rapidly. Although this is definitely a good thing, but the already adult generation can't stand it anymore. Seeing the younger generation becoming more and more outstanding by the day, but they can only stay in the same place. The girls have all been taken by the male lead. It's really living without dignity. Just want to run away overnight. After being discovered by the male lead, it's like a broken pot. Whether to kill or punish, it's up to him. However, the male lead doesn't want to make things difficult for them. After all, they were once considered comrades. He even took out some weapons as farewell gifts. From then on, they each went their own way without interference. How should I put it? Should I say this is my final mercy? Just consider it as a farewell gift. Having gone through this incident, The male lead also wants to reorganize the group again. Coincidentally, Glass's girl brewed alcohol for the first time. This is what he has been dreaming of. Finally able to drink, eat meat, and hold a banquet. Then he also announced the departure of the older generation. If there is anyone who actually doesn't want to accompany him in their heart, they can all speak up to accept the farewell gift and leave. But none of the remaining people raised their hands. So it means they are all steadfast partners from now on, thinking of giving presents to their wives again. The male lead made cute cat earphones with blood. From now on, even when going out hunting, they also have a convenient communication method. After trying it out, he decisively decided to mass-produce it. On the road during the day, the male lead even encountered a human killed by half-beasts. He judged that the person had rare skills. So, he halfway robbed and killed to snatch the prey. To eat people again, he gained the skill of raising monsters. On the other side of the sweet anime, Sha Zhang finally manages to defeat the triangular horse. Sweet temptation anime. Although due to its relatively small power, it was captured without harm. Sweet, please. But it happened to be convenient for the male protagonist to try out new skills. Sweet talks about anime. From then on, the triangular horse became the first familiar of the tribe. From then on, the male protagonist developed a new hobby of being addicted to collecting pets. Seeing the family grow stronger and stronger, from the gray bear to the black wolf king, all were brought into the bag. Sweet moves. Human girls also have personal bodyguards. Sweet anime. Afterwards, the male protagonist was a little surprised. After all, the previous women in red clothes all seemed useless. Sweet sauce. But I didn't expect. She actually likes to turn the tables against the wind. Sweetie, please. Even battling 3 kobolds is a piece of cake for her. Then she tried to follow the male lead and eat something. Unexpectedly, she immediately gained a new profession. From then on, she became a loyal fan of dungeon monster cuisine. She would starve if she didn't eat monsters for a day. Her abilities also increased rapidly. Surprisingly, this world even has specialized monster food warriors. It's really unexpected. Sweetie, please move. Soon, the male lead received a report. The war between humans and fairies finally began. The night was always open to investigation. Suddenly he woke up and found the kobold tribe is desperately fleeing this way. Though the enemies behind are still indistinguishable, the male lead quickly ordered them to prepare to meet the enemy. The arrivals turned out to be skeletons of magical creatures. At first, Xiaomei tried shooting with a bow and arrow, but it was completely ineffective. They watched as a large number of skeletons rushed into the cave with swords. The male lead was thinking of a strategy. He could feel that behind these miscellaneous soldiers, there was a leader. Dealing with only the miscellaneous soldiers would be treating the symptoms and not the root cause. But at this point, both sides were already engaged in close combat. Even if they are small monsters, their numbers are also deadly. Xiao Li unexpectedly discovered during the defense. As long as you avoid their weapons, their actual bone structure is quite fragile. A single physical blow can crush them. The male lead quickly had everyone follow suit when he saw this. Compared to cutting attacks, using punches against skeletons is more effective. With a trick, everything becomes clear. The skeletons have all become the simplest experience packs. The woman in red even nestles to eat secretly on the side. The teeth are really in good condition. The part that they can't handle. Of course, they are all the main character's meal.